For every legendary aircraft that ruled the skies, dozens of experimental designs were left to gather dust. These are the ambitious machines that couldn't survive the cutthroat evolution of American air power.
Let's begin with early Air Force prototypes.
Consolidated Vultee XP-81. This strange bird tried to use both a turboprop and a jet engine. It was built for long-range escort missions. Sadly, the engines were underpowered. The whole idea just could not keep up with the fast pace of aviation history. Northrop XP-79 Flying Ram. This was designed for the terrifying job of ramming into enemy bombers. The pilot had to lie flat on their stomach to handle the force. It was incredibly dangerous. The only prototype crashed on its very first flight. Bell XP-83. It looked like a much bigger version of the P-59. Designers added huge fuel tanks for long flights, but it ended up being too sluggish. Faster jets were already on the way, so this heavy design was quickly cancelled.
McDonnell XF-85 Goblin.
Imagine a tiny egg-shaped jet meant to live inside a giant bomber. It was supposed to drop out and defend the mothership, but trying to dock back up mid-air was nearly impossible. It was a terrifying experience for the pilots. Then, Curtiss XF-87 Black Hawk. This was a massive fighter with 2 jet engines. It was the last-ditch effort for the Curtiss-Wright company. It looked impressive, but it was just too slow. The Air Force eventually chose a rival design instead.
Up next, McDonnell XF-88 Voodoo.
This was designed to fly deep into enemy territory. It had a sleek shape and great potential, but the early engines were far too weak. While this specific model failed, it did eventually evolve into the famous F-101. Up next, Lockheed XF-90. A beautiful twin-engine aircraft with a needle nose and swept wings. It looked fast, but it was far too heavy for its engines to handle. It lost the competition and ended its life being blown up in nuclear blast tests.
Republic XF-91 Thunderceptor.
This design used bizarre wings that were wider at the tips than at the base. It even used rocket engines for an extra boost of speed. It was highly innovative, but just too complex to be practical for the time.
Then, Convair XF-92A.
This was the very first delta wing jet in the United States. It was purely experimental and very difficult to fly. Even though it never saw combat, it paved the way for future supersonic interceptors.
North American YF-93.
This was based on the famous F-86 Sabre, but with a much fatter body and flush air intakes. It was surprisingly fast during testing. However, the military preferred a different design, leaving this one behind.
The next one, North American F-107A.
This striking jet had a strange air intake, mounted right on top of the cockpit. It was incredibly fast and advanced for its day. Sadly, it lost a close competition to the F-105 Thunder Chief and never went into production.
Lockheed YF-12.
This was the twin brother of the famous SR-71 Blackbird. It was built to hunt down enemy bombers at 3 times the speed of sound. Budget cuts and shifting priorities eventually killed the project before it could serve.
Let's move on to United States Navy prototypes.
Curtiss XF-15C. This was a strange hybrid built for the Navy. It used a propeller in the front and a jet engine in the back. By the time it was ready, pure jet engines had already made this mixed design obsolete.
Ryan XF-2R Dark Shark.
This was another attempt at mixing a propeller with a jet engine. It was an evolution of an earlier design. Unfortunately, it just could not compete with the sheer power of newer, pure jet aircraft.
Grumman XF-10F Jaguar.
This was one of the first attempts at a swing-wing fighter. It turned out to be a mechanical nightmare with terrible handling. It was so bad that test pilots nicknamed it the Groundhog because it hated to fly.
Convair F-2Y Sea Dart.
Imagine a supersonic fighter that could land on water. It used retractable skis to handle the waves. The vibration was so intense that it rattled the pilot's teeth. Eventually, the idea of a water-based jet just proved too complicated for the Navy. Douglas XF-5D Skylancer. This was a sleek and powerful evolution of a proven design. It performed beautifully and was actually ready for production. However, it was cancelled because the military did not want to rely on a single manufacturer for all their planes. It ended up serving as a high-speed testbed for NASA instead.
The next one, Grumman F-11F-1F Super Tiger.
This jet was incredibly fast and broke multiple altitude records. It was a massive improvement over the original version. Sadly, it lost out on the big contracts to the Lockheed F-104 Starfighter. It was a world-class machine that simply arrived at the wrong time. The next one, General Dynamics Grumman F-111B. This was an ambitious attempt to create a long-range interceptor for carrier decks. It featured advanced swing wing technology and powerful missiles, but the design was just too heavy and sluggish for shipboard operations. The Navy eventually scrapped it in favor of what would become the legendary Tomcat.
Vought XF-8U-3 Crusader III.
Many pilots believe this was the greatest fighter never built. It was blindingly fast and could outmaneuver almost anything in the sky. It went head-to-head against the F-4 Phantom in flight trials. Even though it performed better in many ways, the dual-seat capability of the Phantom won the day. Moving on to advanced fighter competition prototypes. Northrop YF-17 Cobra. This was a lightweight and agile design built for dogfighting. It lost the Air Force competition to the F-16 because it was more expensive to operate. However, its story did not end there. The design was so promising that the Navy redesigned it to become the F-18 Hornet we know today. General Dynamics F-16XL. Look at that delta wing design. This variant offers advanced multi-role capabilities and serves as a modern evolution of the Gripen platform. Ultimately, the Air Force competition mentioned in the text refers to the F-16XL, which was a strong contender for a new dual-role fighter. But the image provided is of a Saab Gripen. Northrop YF-23. This was the ultimate stealth machine. It was faster and stealthier than the competition during the advanced tactical fighter trials. Many experts still argue it was the superior plane, but the military preferred the more conventional and agile design of the YF-22 Raptor. It remains a legendary what-if in aviation history. Boeing X-32. This experimental jet is often remembered for its unique and bulky intake. It was designed to be a jack-of-all-trades for the Joint Strike Fighter program. While it met the requirements, it struggled with weight issues and vertical landing performance. It lost the contract to the X-35, which became the modern F-35. And our last category is private venture fighter prototypes. General Dynamics F-16-79. This was a modified fighter built specifically for export to other countries. It used an older engine to prevent sensitive technology from falling into the wrong hands. The problem was that it lacked the power of the original. Foreign buyers were not interested in a downgraded version of a frontline jet. Northrop F-20 Tiger Shark. This was an exceptionally reliable and quick scrambling fighter. It was built as a private venture and was meant to be the perfect affordable jet for allies. Even though it was highly capable, it could not compete with the political influence and sales of the F-16. It is often called the best fighter to never enter production. Next, Rockwell XF-V12. This was a bold attempt at a vertical takeoff and landing fighter. It used a complex system of flaps to direct engine thrust downward for lift. In reality, the system was a total failure. It could barely lift its own weight off the ground, and the project was eventually abandoned.